Welcome to the Golden Seams podcast. I'm Gabe, and along with my co-host Michae, we're thrilled to have you join us on this transformative journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Our podcast is all about helping you uncover your authentic self, find your true calling, and create prosperity in alignment with your deepest values and aspirations.
We're diving deep into the theme of boundaries, a crucial aspect of living authentically and pursuing your true path. Known as the Boundaries Lady, we'll be exploring Melissa Urban's insightful book, The Book of Boundaries. She offers invaluable guidance on setting clear, compassionate limits in all areas of life, helping countless individuals reclaim their time, energy, and well-being.
Now, let's talk about boundaries.
My communication around sex, how we handled conflict, the way I needed us to continue to show up for ourselves in the relationship, and the pace at which we moved had never been more clear and direct. This is a quote from Melissa Urban from Chapter 6, Love, Marriage, Sex, and Dishes, Setting Boundaries in Romantic Relationships. She goes on to say, I'm not into that in the bedroom, but I'm down with this, and this, both of us, her and her husband. When I tell you I need to take a break during an argument, please give that to me. This was her. Please don't post photos of the kid on social media. This was her. I don't want to share a bank account, both her and her husband. Being married but living in separate houses doesn't work for me, her husband. This was when they were engaged, looking at becoming married. Today we're going to be talking about clear communication, shared expectations, boundaries, of course. We'll be discussing Melissa's golden rule, how to implement it together, and what to consider if it's one-sided, why you can figure out what works for you and your partner. And we're also going to be discussing why these types of boundaries aren't as cut and dry as the others, determining if you need more than a boundary, most frequent areas that need boundaries broken down by Melissa, and how to set boundaries for those things, prep tips, including finding a good therapist, Melissa's scripts, and helpful book references that she will be giving us. Rules of engagement for conflict and arguments, clear, kind communication, socializing, and does it need a boundary? The best initial boundary that Melissa introduces us to is just affirm that would not work for me.
Melissa goes on to introduce the relationship golden rule. Say what you mean and trust your partner to do the same. She firmly believes this is the number one gift you can give everyone in your life, especially your romantic partner.
Melissa offers us this dialogue. Spouse, is it okay if I go out with friends tonight? You, seething, don't they see how much that would put you out? Sure, babe. Spouse, crossing fingers that you meant it. Okay, thanks. You, 3 hours later, still seething. Spouse, creeping in, bracing for a fight. Hi, I'm back. You, sarcastically, great. I hope you had an awesome time while I stayed home and did everything all by myself. Melissa says if you are a woman and you read that assuming spouse was a man, there's a reason for that. It's an established gendered trope that women never say what we mean because we're coy, people-pleasing, indecisive, manipulative, and it's the man's job to drag out our true feelings out of us, attempt to mind read, or tell us how we really feel. But no matter the gender, it can be ruinous to a relationship when people don't say what they mean or take responsibility for their feeling.
Melissa goes on to describe what she means by say what you mean. She invites us to take a moment to pause and reflect about how we really feel before we communicate in any interaction.
She says instead of, sure babe, try, that idea stresses me out because, and then give your explanation for why it stresses you out.
Melissa then reminds us to trust our partner that they are also saying what they mean. It'll save a lot of disagreement and misunderstandings in conversations when somebody's asking for some time out or to go hang out with friends, to know that maybe they are at a limit and that this is an important outing for them.
She says to hold them to the same standard of clear, kind communication that you've committed to. I want to emphasize this works in a healthy relationship.
Melissa goes on to describe repeat offenders. She invites us to evaluate if this is a one-off situation happening in the communication or if this is a pattern you recognize in your partner. Maybe they're not recognizing how important a night out is for you, or there are other patterns in their behavior that continually fail to respect your needs, demonstrate reciprocity, or communicate as honestly as you do. Melissa suggests that if it's the latter, a therapist could help you work through these fundamental issues. I do think therapists might be coming in sooner than every possible communication mending tactic has been tried for more clear and kind communication. I think resolves almost all of the issues.
Yeah, I agree with that actually.
Melissa goes on, with the golden rule approach, you and your partner have agreed on a path together, and you can both go about your lives knowing each person will be communicating honestly and taking responsibility for their own feelings. The golden rule is huge for preventing unnecessary conflict. When you are willing to say no, instead of agreeing resentfully and fuming silently, your yes will carry more meaning. Your willingness to say no in alignment with your integrity also gives your partner permission to say no to you. This part makes me think about something I've experienced in my own relationships where after a while there was this unspoken fear of losing the relationship, almost bringing it up onto a pedestal above the needs of both people or both partners in the relationship. And that unconscious fear or shame or guilt of acknowledging the reality really created a lot of compromises in the communication dynamics, scheduling, lifestyle choices. I think was preventing any of the clear, kind communication to happen, to find a resolve. I don't know if it's too much holding on to or expectation of the fairy tale projected relationship that we see in the media and culture all around us.
For example, that there's a Prince Charming.
Yeah.
And men have a fantasy about a woman.
Yes. And then as you continue building and learning about each other, that fantasy very quickly evaporates. We're left with facing the reality of the situation, but the fear of acknowledging it. I guess after realizing that the relationship was not what I or she had projected onto it, once we were living through it for a few years together and the reality of the situation started setting in. Maybe it was my own patterning. I don't want to project it onto her, but I think we would compromise certain communications for the sake of preserving the relationship. And the relationship itself almost got lifted above our needs as individuals within it. A lot of unnecessary and unhealthy compromises were made between us and ourselves for the sake of the relationship, not necessarily between each other, but I could also be projecting. I experienced that, but she did not. I'm not sure how common that is.
I think that's really powerful because it's very difficult to admit that this person doesn't live up to your expectations. It's even harder to decide if your expectations are not realistic and they're based on a fantasy or a fairy tale. It's confusing because we are so immersed in it. Disney wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that.
Oh man,
And so trying to separate yourself from that, and it's such a massive immersion, and then realizing, wow, I'm projecting this onto this, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I was younger, women were really excited about their weddings and they'd create these wedding books and they'd do all these things and they'd have different gowns they'd cut out from wedding magazines, and they knew the cake and the flowers and the everything, every detail they knew. They didn't have the guy, but they knew.
Yes.
Then they'd get married and then they'd be disappointed with the marriage. Well, the wedding is just the stepping stone.
Yeah.
One day. Such a big deal in their minds in this fairy tale, and then to go past that, and then the day-to-day, which is now I'm pregnant, now I have to do the dishes, now I have to clean the bathroom, now I have to go to work, now I have to make a living, now I have to, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, the fantasy evaporates very quickly.
And it must be a difficult thing to navigate if clear communication is not a part of the relationship, or boundaries even, because then those expectations can feel like rights or a sense of entitlement to the other person. Each person has a different projection.
Or a justification to not be respectful to your partner because you think they're less than you.
Right.
Instead of standing in integrity with yourself and telling yourself the truth, having the courage to kindly tell them the truth.
It's the unspoken fear of being alone, taking precedence over the reality that we're coexisting with like a not ideal partner in a certain situation for a prolonged time out of that fear. And I'm not sure if that's a me thing, if that's a common thing, but I do know that the more I reflect and sit with my past experiences, I realize that I do not want to be with somebody who does not want to be with me. And we cannot get to the bottom of that without clear communications and authentic expressions of what we need and what we want.
It's so completely true. I'd rather be alone than be disappointed or miserable. It's not worth it. Or
yeah,
worse.
And trying to recontextualize every situation to fit that narrative.
Melissa tells us you can do your relationship any way you want it. She tells us this story about a woman that she met. It was a friend of hers that told her about life with her longtime partner. The woman said, he still has his place and I still have mine. Some nights I want to put on a face mask and sleep alone. Some nights he wants more solitude than my kids can offer. We've been together for 6 years and this just works for us. Melissa tells us two consenting adults really could run their relationship any way they wanted. It didn't have to be conventional, it didn't have to fit societal norms, and it didn't have to make sense to anyone but us. This is another game-changing relationship hack that can be applied to every area of your life and can help you set the healthy boundaries that work best for your partnership. Melissa goes on to cover finances, whether or not you want to merge finances or maintain separate bank accounts and completely separate finances, intimacy, agreeing on monogamy, or having an open relationship, or practicing polyamory, gender roles. Any partner can be the breadwinner, child caretaker, or household manager. Socialization. You can arrive at and leave parties together separately or send one of you home early in an Uber. Inviting your partner, never inviting your partner, sometimes inviting your partner. Have shared friends, friends that are just yours, a few friends, and so forth. This reminds me of a hairstylist that I had years back. She'd gotten married very young to her husband, and they were together for about 8 years. After they had the kids, she decided she just needed some time to herself. She just had been so immersed in the relationship and the kids and the family. So she went to him and said, I'd like to get a divorce. He came back and proposed something different to her. What he said to her was, why don't you take this time for yourself? We'll get you a place to live, your own apartment. I'll keep the kids. We'll stay married. We'll have shared time with the kids, but you take this time for yourself. This went on for several years. She decided she wasn't dating other people. She didn't want another relationship. She simply wanted some space and time for herself. They got back together, came fully back together. They were never fully apart, obviously. She took that time for herself and he accepted it. He proposed that idea. They'd been married many, many years since then. I thought that that was one of the most phenomenal things I'd ever heard. The fact that they could make it work, that it worked for their kids, that they were a family. So when Melissa talks about you can do it any way you want, I happen to really agree with that. She goes on to say, because we never felt pressure to do it any one way, we were free to explore any solution we could imagine, no matter how unconventional. Ultimately, you can do it any way you want allows you to create a life that works for you, having talked through all of the aspects that are important to you both, meeting in the middle, often in unconventional ways.
What makes me think that without having clear and constant communications about our changing wants and needs, how that could even be possible to determine what is the way that you would like. If you don't know, if the other person isn't sharing, or if that's not a established part of the relationship dynamic, I think it externalizes the metrics of what healthy and unhealthy looks like based on outside perceptions over the feelings of the people involved.
And think of how smart that guy was to think more long term.
Yeah, that's huge. To read between the lines, too, of what maybe she needed or wanted in that moment and help out instead of arguing.
To hear that and say, what about this? Would you consider this? Compromise. Their family is still together to this day.
That's beautiful.
I thought that was so fantastic. Both parties commit to the relationship golden rule. If they're able to understand and to clearly and kindly express what they each need, it can build trust, according to what Melissa shares here. And it allows each person to take responsibility for their own feelings about it. She says, communicating more, exploring solutions together, and committing to speaking your truth can solve the vast majority of issues. I'd like to thank all of our listeners, subscribers, followers, and especially our wonderful Patreon members for your support, sharing this community and this path, quoting us, tagging us, whatever kind acts you do with your friends, family, colleagues, and those who, well, just get it. Your gentle but powerful acts of support, no matter how small, tell us and the world this resonates. So we thank you, wholly and fully from our hearts, for being the catalyst wherever you are, because it only takes one step forward to begin to step into your magnificence.
Melissa continues, but before we get into all of that, I want to warn you that this chapter isn't as cut and dried as the others. Though boundaries are magical, they can't solve everything, and that holds especially true for the most common challenges I've witnessed between romantic partners.
And this leads us into determining if you need more than a boundary. Melissa says many of the most common issues that come up in romantic partnerships need to start with communication and expectation setting, not boundaries. She offers a brief list, including division of household labor, finances and spending, how you handle conflict, socialization preferences, privacy and personal space, physical intimacy, trust, and fidelity. Part of the reason these relationships are more challenging to set boundaries with is because if you set a boundary, it can have a negative consequence on yourself. Melissa talks about if you say, I can't do the dishes one more time this week, and they don't get done, and you don't have any clean plates at the end of the week, it can affect you. There's also other things. For example, she mentions a boundary like, my limit is not to go more than 5 days without sexual intimacy, isn't often viable because holding that depends on someone else, and their boundary may conflict with yours, like, I won't consent to sexual intimacy under pressure. These situations can't be solved by one party setting a limit. They require clear communication from everyone involved and the establishment of shared expectations, perhaps facilitated by a therapist. Melissa further breaks this down for us into the issues that primarily will arise in these kinds of relationships.
Household management. These are boundaries around how you and your spouse navigate the division of labor, childcare, finances, and other aspects of your home.
I remember household management boundaries. I remember that as long as I managed the entire household and he didn't have to help, then everything was fine. Yeah, that was a good one. Love that.
It's a good plan for success right there.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Melissa goes on. Don't be sorry. Melissa goes on to interpersonal conflict, setting boundaries around how you will allow yourself to be spoken to or treated by the one you love is one limit you can enforce. That one takes a lot of self-worth, I think, to start solidifying for myself.
I think those boundaries have to be set very early on.
And you have to know what they are within yourself before you can actually set the limits.
And you better know your consequence.
Yeah.
You're red.
Yellow and green.
Yeah.
Melissa then goes on to styles of socializing. It's common for couples to have different preferences around the way they socialize with friends and family, spending quality time together, and get adequate time alone.
I like that she says that there is no one right way to socialize as a couple, and that that's a very important first step. As long as you find strategies that work for both of you, this is stuff that could be and needs to be established right in the beginning.
I agree. Clear communication, not using an external metric for the relationship based on socialized patterns or other cultural influences, I think is a strong decision. Melissa then goes on to privacy and trust. Maintaining a sense of autonomy, personal space, and trust within your relationship is a must, and each of you has to determine what you are and are not comfortable with.
I will just say this. I am not interested in any kind of relationship where I can't trust the other person. I've had my trust violated. You learn a lot in those circumstances, but then you learn a lot about yourself. When I went through my divorce, my attorney got really angry at me and said, I cannot believe you've never gone through your husband's phone. You've never gone through his computer. In all the years I've been a divorce attorney and her parents were divorce attorneys, she'd never seen anything like that. And I just flat out said to her, I am not interested in having a relationship like that with someone where I have to do those things. What is interesting is she was absolutely right in the sense that we discovered he'd been going through all of my stuff.
Wow.
I wasn't hiding anything, but he was stealing my mail. He was going through my emails. We found phone bills that he had gone through, printed out and highlighted and looked up who I was talking to and written notes on the side of, for example, spends too much time with this person, things like that.
Good God.
I think she has a point in knowing those respect and privacy and trust issues and making sure you're really both on the actual same page.
Yes. And I think going back to that idea of being honest, what the limit is and being ready to stand by it.
Completely.
Yeah. Certain things are not worth compromising, and safety is one of them for me. She then goes on to sex and physical connection. This can't be solved with a boundary conversation. It requires a deeper level of communication and problem solving. often with the help of a therapist. This is something that, again, maybe it's because it's so taboo in our culture and society that conversation isn't always happening around this stuff. Clear, kind, upfront communication, I think, will solve all of the problems, but I may not have stumbled on everything yet.
Melissa offers some prep tips for romantic partnership boundaries, and she also discusses the benefits of seeking therapy to support your communication and your boundaries that you're setting with your partner.
She starts her list of tips with, "Go for you." There are tremendous benefits to going by yourself, even if your intention is to improve your relationship. Be the change. One person can change the dynamic. By working on yourself, you will show up differently for your partner, and that means things will shift. Take responsibility. It will help you to regain power in a situation where you've likely felt powerless. Get expert advice. A therapist has probably seen the issues you're confronting before and can offer the most effective strategies for navigating challenging situations. And receive support. If things still don't change for the better, your therapist can support you in whatever decisions need to be made, offer advice for next steps, and share alternative resources.
Melissa wisely counsels that people start therapy before something stressful or painful happens, so that you've already established a relationship, a history, a trust with a mental health care provider. That's excellent advice.
I agree.
Makes a big difference.
I do want to say that I've had situations where I've been looking for a therapist, and after the first meeting did not feel that we were a good match, and definitely felt the urge to explore other options, considering weighing out how long can I go without help and what kind of help am I willing to settle for meanwhile, and somewhere between there, ideally closer to the harmonious side of the scale.
I really value what she says about working on yourself because it does shift the relationship. I had a therapist tell me when I was married she could help me, but that she knew that he did not want help and that he was not going to let anyone help him and he was not going to change. And she said, I can be upfront with you about this, but I can help you. That was extremely empowering to me because I knew that if someone were to help me, that I had additional support, and therefore I could start to put together a plan and figure out what I needed to do, what I could live with, what I couldn't, and start creating the life that I wanted. I'm very grateful that this therapist said that to me. Not saying that that's always the case where both parties won't go in there and mutually agree and work together for a positive solution. But either way, I believe that empowering yourself is a step forward. It will always benefit you. Finding a good therapist being someone who helps you, gets you, supports you, can give you different perspectives and solutions. And I think that those are really powerful things that therapy can provide.
I very much agree. One of the check-ins I do is how safe do I feel with this person, and will this dynamic be comfortable for me to be vulnerable to the level I need? Because that I can tell right off the bat based on somebody's responses and how they ask me the questions. There's sometimes energy in the tones and demeanor that are pretty revealing. Not to say some are right or wrong, but good match is a good match and you'll know when it fits.
Yeah, that's really good. I also think it's valuable to know what the therapist training is and what their experience is when looking for a good therapist. And does it match up with what your needs are and what you're looking to accomplish in your relationship and in your life? And I think that those are valuable pieces.
I agree.
Now, a little shameless pitch here. I'm thrilled to announce that we're offering exclusive content on our Patreon, The Golden Seams. We want to take a moment to further explain what we are doing to support and benefit you on your path. Our Golden Alchemist level members all receive a specially crafted 15 to 20 minute deep meditation focused on creating and maintaining clear, kind boundaries, our theme right now. This meditation, when practiced daily for 21 to 30 days, can help you naturally integrate healthy boundaries in your relationships with yourself and energetically, fully helping you incorporate positive boundaries into your life, paving the way for authentic living and personal growth.
This membership level also includes a powerful 1-hour Boundaries Subliminal audio, which serves as the backdrop for the deep meditation. These audios are designed to help release difficulties in creating clear, kind boundaries while simultaneously assisting you in establishing and maintaining them. They incorporate Solfeggio frequencies and binaural beats for maximum effectiveness. Michae, guided by her higher senses, creates these transformative tools previously reserved for her private clients. To amplify your boundary setting journey, we're including a custom designed mandala by a talented artist from India, intuitively guided, synchronized with our themes. This visual tool, when infused with your own energy and displayed in your workspace or on your vision or mood board, can help manifest clear, kind boundaries in your life. The mandala serves as a powerful manifestation tool, helping you bring your desires and intentions into reality. Both the audio and the mandala are infused with Reiki energy by Michae, a Reiki master, to support you even further.
The combination of deep meditation, subliminal audio, and mandala work creates a powerful synergy. If you're ready to transform your life, create prosperity aligned with your authentic self, and master the art of setting clear, kind boundaries, you won't want to miss what's coming next. One of the helpful book references that Melissa offers is Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. In this particular book, she says that Rodsky offers this blueprint of household tasks. Initially, considering conception, for example, seeing that the trash needs to be taken out, planning, observing all the different trash cans throughout the house need to be emptied and everything needs to be broken down for recycling, for example, and then execution, breaking down the boxes, taking everything out, taking all the trash out. Melissa says, in Rodsky's Fair Play system, each household task is fully owned by one person all the way through, from conception to planning to execution. She says Rodsky also recommends establishing a minimum standard of care for each task, where each partner agrees on what it means to say a task is completed. So when you say, it's garbage day, everyone understands that means dispensing of all of the garbage in the house and the cardboard boxes. She says that this model came from corporate management to treat your house like it's a dynamic business.
That's awesome.
This makes a lot of sense, especially when there's heated arguments about a particular task or a particular thing.
Melissa goes on to share another great tip: to put it on a schedule. She outlines how much easier it is to automate a boundary and put everything clearly out for both parties to understand.
One of the scripts that we wanted to share with you from this section is from a woman that reached out to Melissa, and this is what she said. My partner doesn't consult me when making big financial purchases. He bought a second fun and expensive car without even talking to me. But he's the wage earner in our family. I stay home with the kids, and he says it's his money. What can I say in this situation? Melissa offers the green, of course. This marriage is a partnership in all areas. I'd like to make decisions involving our finances together, just like the decisions we make about the kids or the house. Yellow. I expect to be consulted before we make a large purchase. When you don't do that, I feel disrespected and disregarded, and that's not a healthy place for a relationship to be. And red. This relationship isn't going to work if you don't value my contributions or input. Melissa goes on to add, when a spouse says something like, it's my money, that demonstrates a lack of value or respect for everything you do to manage your household. I want to emphasize that if you are in a relationship where your partner or your spouse says these words to you, this is a huge red flag. To me, that's an instant you need to get a third party, a good therapist involved, and you need some support, because I believe that that is one of the most devaluing things that you can say to a person who is managing your household, raising your children. And I'm not just speaking as if it was a woman doing these things. If your partner says something like this to you, in my opinion, this is a red flag. I want to emphasize it's not okay. They need to have a clearer understanding of valuing you, because what it does mean is they don't value you. That is not a good place to be. That is not a partnership. That is not level footing. Get help if that's what's going on in your marriage or your relationship. Melissa then shares scripts for setting boundaries around interpersonal conflicts. To preface, she says every relationship experiences conflict, and how you handle it can make or break your sense of trust, safety, and connection. One of the first things relationship experts recommend is to create rules of engagement around arguments before they happen.
Here are some tips that Melissa outlines for setting boundaries around interpersonal conflicts. Do not use the other person's deepest fear against them. Using that knowledge against the other person in the midst of an argument, or at any point really, is strictly off limits. Create a code phrase to interrupt the pattern. Remember, we're a team. Our shared goal is to figure things out together. Invoking our code phrase is almost always effective at shifting the energy and our moods. Stick to one subject during arguments. Bringing up fights from 2 years ago is never helpful or productive, so we made a deal that we stick to one topic at a time and stay with it until it feels appropriately resolved. Honor requests for a timeout. The person who requested the timeout must come back to the conversation within a reasonable amount of time.
Do you have to do all of these? Because how do you win an argument if you do those, Gabe?
I think you have to surrender the win.
Just
Give up
kidding.
the title.
Totally kidding. I don't know what strategies you could win with.
I know, where's that chapter? It's probably in the sequel.
Yeah. When boundaries don't work.
Yeah. Pulling out the big guns.
Oh, God. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of The Golden Seams. If you found value in today's episode, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit. We're truly grateful for your presence and participation in this journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Remember, your path to authenticity and prosperity is unique, and we're honored to be a part of it. This is Gabe and Michae signing off until next time.
Thank you.